Hello, Ray Phoenix here. This is Super Mario Bros. For the NES. This is the Chinese language patched version where all the text and everything, all the text that appears in the game is all in Chinese. This game is the same as the American version of the game. It plays just what you expect a Mario game to play like. I even forgot I was playing this version of the game as I was playing through this. Just all the text is in Chinese, like even where it says time and score, 1-up, that's all in Chinese with a Chinese language patch. I found this ROM on my Chinese PSP I made a video of. I managed to copy it because it doesn't really play very well in the Chinese PSP because the controls are kind of wonky and it's all kind of plays very slow too. I wasn't sure if it was the ROM or not, or maybe it's the emulator that's embedded into that Chinese PSP. Well, I managed to copy it off of that Chinese PSP and put it onto my superior Nestopia emulator on my PC, and it plays like a charm. I don't even know if it's a Chinese version most of the time. This is Super Mario Bros. This is what you expect Super Mario Bros. To be. It's just in Chinese. The first level is, I honestly know this first level from muscle memory because I've played it so many times. I think I have played this game. It probably is one of the games that I've played more than any other game and beaten more than any other game. Yet it took me so many years to play this. There was a time when I would play this game a lot on my original NES, simply because at one point in time, it was one of the only games I had on the NES. The NES is the only real system I had, and I was only stuck playing this and a few other games like Super Mario Bros. 3, Gyrus, the Batman game I did a Let's Play of some time ago. Those are some of the only games I had at the time, so of course I play them a lot because they were some of the only games I had. Honestly, the best games ever, but they were decent considering the fact that it was all you had, so this is one of the only games I would play. I remember Francis saying that this was one of the only games he had when he was a kid, and the only reason why I had it when he was a kid was simply because it came with the system. A lot of NES systems came bundled with this version, or not this version, but the original Super Mario Bros. I definitely think the All-Stars version is a lot better. They made a remastered remake version of this game years later, where it was Super Mario All-Stars. Super Mario All-Stars, it was 16-bit. And on the SNES, that version was pretty much the better version overall, but this version's a lot more classic and iconic. I said the same thing about Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 is objectively a way better game than this game, but this game is the iconic favorite that everyone is familiar. Everyone recognizes this version, is familiar with this version with this game. It's just more iconic. Even though it's not necessarily better than the SNES version or better than Super Mario Bros. 3, which Super Mario Bros. 3 almost looks like an SNES game considering how much better the graphics look than on this. But again, a lot of people may not have noticed as much in 1980 whenever these games came out, because TVs back then weren't really that great. The quality was really low quality. It was all fuzzy and grainy a lot of the time too. I remember making that joke in my Batman video that people in the 80s must have spent a lot of fortune on headache medication, because you would probably be needing some of that if you're going to be watching TV a lot in the 80s, and TV was all people in the 80s did for fun back then. I mean, most families had 2 TVs. Whoa, he has 2 TVs. He's joking. No one has more than 1 TV. I only had 1 TV in the mid-2000s, and it was a crappy TV from the 80s. That's why I don't really like the 80s that much. I think the 80s is an overrated decade. The only great things that ever came out of the 80s were some of these video games, not taking into account that you've been playing on sucky TVs. Some movies, like the Back to the Future movies, and Gremlins, and Star Wars, and Indiana Jones, and that 1989 Batman movie. There was some great stuff in the 80s, but most of the time, the 80s is an overrated decade. I don't really like it that much as a decade. That's whenever I write the 80s into a lot of my works, my content works, like the movies and comics and stuff that I write about. It's often depicted as being a bland, dismal decade, which is exactly what I think of when I went of the 80s. We could kill this fake Bowser right here just by shooting all these fireballs at him and he gets killed. I'm not sure if this translation patch is the actual one. He says, "Thank you, Mario, but Chairman Mao put a spying device on you," or something like that. Or, "Thank you, Mario, but Obama raised your taxes again. Thank you, Mario, but some Chinese president, maybe Chairman Mao or something, that took all of your money so we could give it for the greater good," right? I don't know if this is an actual official translation patch or not. It may have been fan-made. It suggests it's fan-made too, because if you looked at the title screen, it said like September 2002 was the date for this. And that was long after the NES was discontinued, so maybe that's when this version was dated. This translation patch. And people do make translation patches for games. There was this one guy, this one Japanese gamer wanted to make a translation patch, a Japanese translation patch for the American version of Spyro 1 because the Japanese version of that game sucks. They want to, like, give it its American glory, but in Japanese. I wish I could have some more games. I wish there were more. I mean, I have been learning Japanese these past months, and I have been playing Japanese video games a lot to help me learn the language. A lot of games aren't available in Japanese. Even some games that get released in Japan, the American or British games that get released in Japan, are not in Japanese. Like, the original Wipeout is like that. The original Wipeout is even though it got released in Japan, the Japanese version is only in English. That wouldn't really help me at all learn Japanese. Probably figured out it's Wipeout. It's a very easy game. It's very simple to pick up and play and figure out. They could have said the same about this game too. This Super Mario Bros. Game isn't really language dependent, really. Yeah, sure, there's language in the game, but it's not really something you need to go through the game. It's not an RPG. No, Mario won't have an RPG for at least another 11 years or so after this game came out. And oh boy, I used to love doing this as a kid, just playing as Mario and swimming through these waters and shooting meatballs at the blooper and shooting meatballs at all the fish. Just downright frickin' massacring all the fish in the sea. Yeah, the ocean population in the Mushroom Kingdom just suddenly decreased drastically, all because Mario did something supposed to be impossible. I often think those are meatballs, maybe, because people say they're fireballs, but how can fireballs exist underwater? Wouldn't they just instantly get extinguished from being under the water? But no, somehow Mario is able to use that. I mean, they're magic. Maybe it's like magic fire or something like that. Maybe Mario is some kind of like wizard thing, maybe. Because I don't know, some wizards come with like magical fire powers or stuff. They can just zap everything or kill everything like that, and building up a big score. I don't think the score in this game ever does anything. I wonder what the maximum score anyone ever got at this game was. I doubt anyone cares, because even though this game has a score, this isn't really a score dependent game. I mean, this isn't an arcade game, but there is an arcade version of this that is found out called Versus Super Mario Bros. I actually saw it in an arcade I visited in Perth, whereas that same arcade where I filmed that Ms. Pac-Man video, or Ms. Pac-Man runs freakishly fast, and then there was Frogger there too. Versus Super Mario. So I didn't get to play it though, but I did get to get it on my emulator, and it's just like this, but it's even more challenging. It's supposed to be like an arcade game based on score. I bet the highest score I ever got, this is probably 999,990 points. I think that's the most amount of score you could possibly get. I doubt you could get anything more than 1,000,000 points. Or maybe we'll just break, or maybe the score will just, maybe we'll get a score so high it breaks the thing or resets it. I know Frogger, I remember a long time ago I played Frogger on the Genesis, and I got such a great score at it that the scoreboard just broke and was like, ooh, like showing like pixelated stuff. I remember hearing that guy that played Pac-Man, perfect game of Pac-Man back in 1999, face something like that. Because you're just not intended to get that far in these games. I always try to get every single coin I could possibly get at this level, this bridge level. There's fish flying everywhere. Because if you collect every coin in that level, and then you get to level 3-1, there is a hidden one-up that's going to appear where you just jump. It's on that bridge. I'll demonstrate it later, but there's a bridge, and then I got all the coins. It definitely will be able to unlock that one-up. You need to save as many one-ups as possible. My strategy for this game, I do use warp zones. I don't use as many warp zones like in the fastest, get through the game in the fastest amount of time possible. That's more of a speed running thing. And by doing it this way, I end up with getting more lives, so that way I'll have a better chance at beating the final boss, because I'm just not that confident enough that I could defeat the final boss with just, running through the game as fast as I can. Whoa! I remember Ernest P. Worrell once mentioned that something was like the 8th level in Mario Brothers. It sounded funny just hearing him say something like that in a movie. The 8th level in Mario Brothers. I wonder if Mario had anything to do with Ernest P. Worrell, since they both wear hats all the time, and they're both were popular in the 80s, only Ernest promoted all kinds of products. He's also one of the greatest things that came out of the 80s were his commercials. I will admit, the 80s actually was kind of a magical time for TV advertisements and TV commercials. Sometimes ads can be quite funny, sometimes they're quite entertaining. So if you don't really get much of commercials these days, because no one really watches TV anymore. And quite frankly, I'm actually glad that a lot of people don't watch TV anymore. I'm glad that TV is becoming a declining industry. It's getting what it deserves. You also get score too from smashing these blocks right here, these large bricks, to make the sound, and then you can get scores. This is where the 1-up is going to appear at. Just can use my meatballs to kill all those mushrooms. Just jump around here, and there it is. There's the 1-up. That must be 1-up in Chinese, I guess. I don't know how you say it all, because I know nothing about Chinese. I never studied Chinese at all. I have no idea how to speak it at all or read it at all. I do know how to read Japanese to a small extent. That's Japanese. That's a language that's derived from Chinese. This is another one of those bonus stages, too. I kind of like what they did in the All-Stars version when they actually made new music for these bonus stages. And so it's like they weren't as lazy, but again, it may have just been because, you know, it's the limitations of the NES. The NES was a very limited system. Actually, I'm quite impressed they're able to do some of those like shading effects they put on there. There's lighting effects they put on some of the sprites in this game. That actually is quite impressive for a video game in 1985, when all people really knew about video games prior to 1985 was stuff like Pac-Man or Space Invaders that was very primitive and very amateur compared to stuff like this. This is a real game. This is like where gamers are really born. I remember a long time ago watching a documentary about that, and someone said there's a difference between gamers and game fans. Game fans are just people who like to play games for fun. Gamers are people who actually seriously play games and seriously do stuff in the games. I guess I qualify as a gamer then because I actually play games that actually do real serious stuff in it. This just gives you 5,000 points if you hit that Koopa shell and run after it. This gives you 5,000 points. But in the All-Stars version, I didn't Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color. It's another re-release this game out on the Game Boy Color, which looks pretty much the same as this. You actually get a 1-up from doing that. Made the game slightly easier. This game also had a sequel that was supposedly hard as hell for a lot of people, and almost no one knew how to beat it. Yeah, I played it once a long time ago, and I actually beat the game. I actually beat it like once, or at least once, I think, is when I beat the sequel to this game. People say it's one of the hardest games ever, but I don't think it is. Surely there's a lot of games out there that I think are way harder than the Super Mario Bros. 2. I still like to acknowledge that one as being the true sequel to Super Mario Bros. And not the Doki Doki Panic one. I don't like that one as much. I mean, it's not bad, but I just don't think it's a true Mario game. And again, what is a true Mario game? I remember there was an employer I had a long time ago at a workplace that disagreed with me that Donkey Kong 64 is a real Donkey Kong game. He also disagreed that Donkey Kong Jr. is a real Donkey Kong game. I wonder if he considers Super Mario Bros. To be a real Mario game. I'll admit, if I was a kid back in 1985 getting this for Christmas, this probably would have been my favorite game ever. I probably would have played this more times than I played Jumping Flash, and I probably think more of this game than I do of Jumping Flash, because Jumping Flash is one of my most played games ever. I think people have watched my videos where now actually think of Jumping Flash. I'm using the same controller that I would typically use to play Jumping Flash. I was using my PS1 controller, the one that came with the slim PS1. That's my default controller for a lot of these classic games. I have to admit, I'm quite impressed with the detail. I mean, this game could have looked more like an Atari 2600 game. I think there is an unofficial port of this for the Atari 2600 somewhere. But for what little they had to work with, I mean, then again, some people say, well, NES was clearly more advanced than this in terms of graphics, but it was an early NES game, so I cut it slack for that. This actually did come bundled with just a cartridge that just had Mario on it. I remember when I was a kid, I remember going to my basement, to my grandma's basement, and there was an NES there. I had to fetch the cartridge of this game out of that NES, and it also had Duck Hunt on it, but for the longest time, I could never play Duck Hunt because I didn't have a controller of it. Years later, I eventually got the Zapper controller for it, so I did get to play Duck Hunt eventually. Now I can't play Duck Hunt anymore because I don't have any TV anymore. It's compatible with Duck Hunt. It doesn't work with modern TVs. I don't know, there's some sort of emulator you could get that could play Duck Hunt, I don't know. But I still have my cartridge of that. It wasn't a magical experience picking that up for the first time. I often consider this game to be the first video game I ever played and the game that really got me into the spirit of gaming. So I guess I do owe something to this game. I have fond memories of sitting in my bedroom in the early 2000s playing this game, and in the mid-2000s playing this game in the living room. This is one of the only games I had. So I guess I do owe something to this game. I do like the SNES version, of course, but this is still pretty good. I still wish I could have had an SNES when I was a kid, but I got a Genesis instead. Not that I'm complaining, I actually kind of like the Genesis more. There actually is a Genesis port of this game that someone made. It's pretty much the same as this, but the music sounds different, so it sounds like it's being played with Sega Genesis instruments. There's this block. Here we see like a block like that in the middle of the bricks, and it pretty much means, oh, you could hit it a bunch of times, and it will give you coins, so you could You can jump off that, jump to the flagpole and get 2,000 points. I used to wonder what that picture thing on the flagpole was. I think it was, I think it's supposed to be a mushroom, but to me it looks more like a plant leaf or something. It looks like something from a commercial I saw somewhere, or like a leaf plant like that. It also looks like something that could be like a flag of a country or a territory, perhaps a state flag maybe, or something like that. I remember I had a lot of difficulty understanding how Mario and Luigi worked in this game. I remember trying to play this game as a long time ago. Actually, I set it for 2-player mode, and then it switched to Luigi, and I wondered, oh, what's happening? Why isn't he moving? Why can't I move? I moved. Didn't really explain anywhere. I never had the instruction book for this game, because no one keeps NES instruction books, right? So you have no idea, like, why can't I move around anymore? We're trying to show this. I remember sometime later, around 2006, I tried showing this game to some people, to some kids that came over, and then they're like, where am I in this game? You set a 2-player game, so where am I on the screen? Said, you'll appear after I get killed. That's how it works in this game. And then he's like, whoa, and he had issues with the controllers well too, and he's kind of like saying, like, and then later he brought up the system, and he's like, yeah, remember that N64 he had? I never owned an N64, I don't know what you're talking about. And what was that system you had? I said, you mean the NES? And he's like, no, it's like N64, because I remember mentioning my Batman videos, a lot of kids in that day and age seemed to think the N64 was the original Nintendo system, when it wasn't. It was this, the original NES. And this is the original Super Mario Bros. I sometimes wish the N64 could have had backwards compatibility with NES and SNES games, even Game Boy games. It could have been the ultimate Nintendo Entertainment Center. You know, they call it the Nintendo Entertainment System. You know, the only kind of entertainment it really gives you is... Yeah, it's like the title kind of implies that it would be something you can play more than just video games. But again, what was an entertainment system in 1985? I don't really think people had like full-fledged entertainment systems. People barely had VCRs in 1985. That was around the time Blockbuster was coming out. Back in 1985, people could rent games. So game rentals were a really big thing. Apparently Nintendo once wanted game rentals to become illegal because they don't make money off of them. But they're insane for thinking that. Nintendo is an insane company. I wonder what Nintendo thinks of the fact that I got this game from a Chinese PSP that has their game on. Oh yeah, I bet Nintendo's gonna love that. Nintendo's gonna love me playing the Chinese version of Super Mario Bros. Some people wonder if they put spying stuff in it too, like maybe the government's spying on me or something like that. I remember my grandma used to say it's like, oh, you don't want to go to Japan. The government spies on you. You're gonna be poor. You're not gonna have anything. Clearly my grandma knows a lot about Japan. But I wonder if the Chinese PSP has any spying stuff. And supposedly ZTE was once banned in America once because it supposedly had stuff that spied. You know, the Chinese government using ZTE phones to spy on us. I only ever owned one real ZTE phone. At least I only ever used one really as like a main primary phone for years on end. It actually lasted for quite a long time. It lasted longer than most iPhones last for. I used to use it to record commentary in a lot of my YouTube videos up until mid-2022. I think my Twisted Metal 4 Let's Play was the last Let's Play I did with the ZT phone as a speaker, and I mean as a microphone, and it worked. And it worked real. I mean, microphones could have come a long way, and they're at a point now to print the best they could ever get. The Chinese PSP is capable to record your voice too, but the audio quality isn't really that good. I mean, it's just as good as the picture quality on that thing with the film stuff, the camera. You know, well, that turns out. 8-2, a lot of people say 8-2 is like the most challenging level in the game. Was it 8-2 or 8-3? I don't remember. I think 8-3 is a little bit more challenging because it has the hammer bros everywhere. They throw hammers around everywhere. I used to be scared of a bird. I used to be scared of those hammer bros. You know, it's like nightmare fuel for kids. I'm sure a lot of kids in the 80s probably had nightmares. But oh look, I now have Castle 0 lives. So if you had so many lives in this game, the game starts to forget how many lives you have, and it starts showing like castle thing lives. And look at that bullet building, that bullet bill is shooting at it. I didn't get the best look at it, but there's actually a graphical corruption there. And that's the only thing the only visual change, or the only visual thing I've noticed in this NES, in this Chinese version of the game, is that there's like the graphical corruption there. Another odd thing too, I did admit there were a lot of other NES games that also came with the Chinese PSP. A lot of them are in Chinese. I copied a lot of them. They're not even labeled properly. It just says something like game this, game that. Like this ROM that I'm playing right now is officially labeled as Game 8, and there's like so many games. Some of them were labeled in Chinese lettering, and so one of the games that it came with it was like a Chinese version of Double Dragon was on here. And there were some other weird hokey games that I've never even heard of or didn't even know existed, and probably would have never have known if it started. But yeah, it also came with hundreds of Game Boy Advance games. There doesn't seem to be a way for me to get the Game Boy Advance games from that thing or copy those onto my computer. All the Game Boy Advance games seem to be American or European versions of games because they're all in English. But Game Boy Advance ROMs are pretty easy to come by a lot of the time. We have tons of those already, so it's really not really much of a big deal. And there, we're at the final level now. The large castle doesn't look any different from any of the other castles we've seen. I guess they were lazy, or maybe Bowser was doing some kind of trick where he like sets up so many castles and Mario has to guess which one's the correct one. But of course Mario's doing the guessing, not us, because the game's gonna make us play all the way through. Some people would say if you could just guess which castle it was, can you just go right to the last level? Well, almost no game ever made lets you skip to the last level just right off the bat. Almost no game would ever let you do that. And this is one of these looping stages. Some are failing hard. I also have PTSD over failing hard at the looping stage in this game. I have no idea what I'm doing. Why is it just running forever, ever, and ever? Of course, my kid self never figured out that, oh, you're supposed to go a certain way, a certain path. I mean, the Super Mario All-Stars have made it a little bit more obvious, where they actually made like audio feedback telling going the wrong way. I actually like this segment more in this version than the All-Stars version, because it actually plays the underwater theme, and it actually made it look like it's, they use the underwater color palette, but you're still in the castle, and there's bloopers there too. I actually think that's a pretty creative thing, and she butchered it a bit in the SNES version. And of course, Bowser's gonna have a top-of-the-top guard guarding him to Hammer Bro, but you could kill him easy with the meatballs. And now look, here's Bowser. Let's just kill him. Let's throw meatballs at him until he's dead. And there, we killed Bowser. Now we can take that axe and cut that walkway. There, we rescued the princess. I think what that says is, thank you, Mario, but you rescued the wrong princess. I'm not the princess you were trying to rescue. I'm actually Princess Zelda. You just did Link's job. Yeah, this is the Chinese version of Super Mario Bros. Ray Phoenix signing out.